Hello and welcome to another video from the only source of information that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I always like to make well-written scripted videos that I know are 100% accurate, and I don't have any problem putting the stuff out there because I don't doubt it. And this kind of is one of the things I believe in. I don't doubt it for me, but I feel a little uncomfortable sharing it with others because, first off, it's completely different from anything that anybody else teaches. Secondly, I cannot scripturally prove what I'm about to say, but I'm going to give you the information that is scriptural and explain to you why I believe what I believe. At least, at the very least, I'm going to disprove a lot of what religion teaches. So when this is over with, you're going to know that your religion is wrong. You may also think I'm wrong. If you can come up with a third possibility as to what this information means, feel free to leave a comment about that in the comment section. But one of the things I've noticed from my studies of the Bible is that, I study everything. I don't just study the Bible. I read the Quran. I read the Old Testament and the New Testament. I've read books of other religions, the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran. And the stories are pretty much the same. They all have these details that are different. And religious people will argue to no end about the minor details, like what kind of a sandwich does God approve of? What costume do you need to wear on February the 5th? Whatever. There's just these stupid little things that people get into fights over that are pretty insignificant. But for the most part, every ancient book about God is similar. One of the biggest differences is that most really ancient books are about the gods. They're not about God. They're about the gods. So you get things like Jupiter and Thor and Osiris and all of these beings, but they all resemble characters from the Bible. So, you had the god, the king god, and the war god, and the god of music, and the god of the forge, and the god of agriculture. All of these different things that human beings have developed over the eons of time supposedly were developed by the gods. The interesting thing about that is that every god mentioned in the mythologies of the ancient past resembles people from the Bible. So there was a guy that's mentioned that created war. There's a guy that created agriculture. There's different people, but they're not called gods. It just makes reference to the fact that they did these things. So really, if these were people, but all the mythologies call them gods, there could be some contradiction there between the two stories. But I'm going to explain that perhaps not. So the first scripture is Genesis 1:1. That's the one we're going to start off with. It says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth." Well, if you read that in Hebrew, it says, "In the beginning the gods," plural, "created heaven and earth." And I've tried to explain this away in the past by simply saying that when God created heaven and earth, each and every one of us was still in God. I mean, that's a concept that's found in the Bible. We were in God. And so it could be said that we were there at creation. I was unconscious at the time. I don't remember it. But perhaps some people who were there in God at the time of creation do remember it. I don't know. But the fact that it says, "In the beginning the gods created the heavens and the earth," that's a little bit, it goes against what all these religions teach. The religions that exist today, for the most part, are monotheistic. Not all of them, but most of them are monotheistic. That means one God. But in the ancient past, that was not the case. Almost every religion was based on a multiplicity of gods. So you had these gods that created fire and gods that created war and music and all of those things. Well, in the Bible, there is a line of people, a family of people that created all those things. At least that's the way it's presented to us, but not really. When God created man, according to our English Bibles, it said that let us make man like us. The gods are talking to each other. Let us make man in our image. Well, that's not what it says in the Bible. Once again, that's a mistranslation. It says specifically, let us make Adam in our image. So this is the part that you're going to have to struggle with, and you have to make your own decisions, because I'm telling you what the Bible says. Now I'm going to tell you what I think it means. And even if you don't believe in what I think it means, at least you have the basic information. You could process it in a way that you can believe. So, when God created Adam, it was the 6th day. At the end of the 6th day, he said, rest. And so the 7th day was supposed to be rest. And that's where we get our law, from the 10 Commandments that says, honor the Sabbath to keep it holy. But when he created Adam and Eve, he told Adam, make sure to take care of all the land animals and the fish and the birds and the trees. So Adam was given that job. He was told to name the animals and to keep the animals from harming themselves or from harming the earth, and that was why he was sent here. But we have to ask ourselves, what were these animals? In the fossil record, there are millions of species. Literally 99% of all the living things that existed on this earth at one time have gone extinct. And so every now and then, some paleontologist or whatever, they'll go out and dig a hole and they'll find a skeleton or a bone or some kind of an artifact from prehistoric times. And some of those bones that they have found are humans. Now, I've never had a problem with this. A lot of religious people get all upset about this because, there's Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons, and born-again Christians know that that's all fake because God only made man. And it's not true. I mean, I don't trust everything that science teaches, but, they have people today that when someone gets murdered and they find a body or they find a skeletal remains, they'll take all those bones, bring them to a laboratory or whatever, and they measure them and they weigh them, and they say, oh, this was a middle-aged Chinese man. They buy into it. It's not like fake science. They usually, once they get through with the process, there's good possibility they'll figure out who it is just by doing that. But they can tell a woman's skeleton from a men's skeleton. They can tell an obese person from a skinny person. They can tell the child from an elderly person. So it's kind of hard for me to just make some kind of blank statement or whatever about there was never any such thing as cavemen. To me, if we have black people, we have white people, we have Asian people, it doesn't really bother me that they've got caveman people. But none of those people apparently are still alive. So they, over the course of time, for whatever reason, they went extinct. Well, that isn't necessarily true either. I believe that when God created the birds and the fish and the land animals, he created us. Remember, Adam wasn't a human. Adam was a god. That's what it says. It says, let us make Adam in our image. Let's make him like us. In our English Bibles, the problem is that it doesn't say that. It says, let us make man in our image. Well, man would be everybody. Black people, white people, Asian people, caveman people. I don't think that's the way it works. I think that on the fifth day, when God made all the land animals, he made all of us. And then he sent Adam to take care of us. Now, I've made a video series called Melchizedek, or Melchizedek, however you want to pronounce it, where I explained that Adam is Jesus. You know, I don't really want to argue about that, because if that's the first time you heard it, that's going to upset you. But I told you the name of the series is Melchizedek, and the name of that particular video, I can't remember, but I think it was, Who is Jesus? Jesus is Adam. Now, how was Adam supposed to take care of mankind, or to take care of the entire world, you know, plants, animals, trees, everything? Well, when Jesus was on the earth, what did he do? He walked on water, raised the dead, healed the blind, you know, the lame, healed every disease. That sounds like the kind of powers that Adam would have needed to make sure that mankind was okay, to make sure that the earth was okay. So, all of these stories about Adam and Eve and their offspring seemingly are the same stories that exist in the mythologies found around the world about multiple gods. Remember, let us make Adam in our image. And that's another thing. In an English Bible it says, if I've already said this, I'm sorry, but it says in the English Bible, let us make man in our image. That's not what it says. If you go back and look at the Hebrew, it says, let us make Adam in our image. And the word Adam means red earth. It doesn't mean human. There are several verses where it seems like the word Adam perhaps could be translated as human, but for the most part, all of those verses stopped. There was no more verses about the Adam after Isaac died. Because remember, Adam and Eve were brother and sister. Very likely, as we're taught, Seth reproduced offspring with his sister. Seth was the child of Adam and Eve that came, and his name means set, as in set in place. Now, Abel had just been killed right before Seth was born, and his name, he was given his name because in the words of Eve, I have a replacement set in place for Abel. But I don't know why Abel needed to be replaced other than the fact that he was the replacement for Adam, or maybe an addition, because remember, Adam was a god, and once God realized Adam needed a helper, he took Eve out of Adam. And so Adam and Eve were like, well, I can't say they were clones because it would take the exact same DNA, and male DNA and female DNA are not the same, but I think it's very likely that Adam and Eve look like twins. And so when they had children like Cain and Abel and Seth and what other children they may have had, they probably would have looked identical to their parents. But in the meantime, there are a lot of stories, especially in mythology, about the gods reproducing offspring with humans. And I really believe Adam and Eve did that. And the reason I believe it is because as you go along, all these brothers and sisters are reproducing offspring until you get to Jacob. Jacob never had sex with any of his sisters or any of the people from that tribe. That tribe was all pure bloods. So it says that Isaac and Rebekah, I think that's his wife, Isaac, were distraught because Jacob didn't reproduce offspring with his sisters. He had offspring with the women of the land. So that scripture right there tells me that for some reason there were people out there that were not part of this family, And in fact, all of them, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all had children by, well, not Isaac, but Abraham had children by a whole bunch of women, but only one was his sister. And another thing that really kind of made me think about this is that Abraham had a bunch of kids. And the angels came to him and said, your child is going to inherit the land. And what was Abraham's? Well, first off, Abraham said, yeah, right, I'm 100, my wife is 100, we're not going to have any kids. And he didn't say, oh, great, what was that kid name? Is it Esau? No, he had Isaac and, I can't even think of his name now, but I don't remember. Anyway, if he had a kid, why didn't that kid inherit the land? Well, because he wasn't a pure blood. His mother was a human. Remember, Abraham and Sarah were gods. They were the purebred offsprings of Adam, who was said to be a god. So from that point on, everybody was mixed. I mean, we know that they were able to have children by women that were not gods because it lists the kids. In the Bible, it lists them. So I just think that instead of keeping that to myself, because I mean, I've talked to a lot of people about this, my subscribers that call me, and I never got the kind of response from them that would, lead me to make this video. They don't, people I tell this to seem like they take it in and they think deeply about it. But, usually when I throw something like that out there, everybody's on board like, oh my God, you've got to make a video about this. No one's telling me to make this video. But, you have the information. You know that it's very obvious that Adam and Eve would have been pure bloods, that they would have had children that were identical to them. I don't think we could have ever gotten any variety out of that. To this day, everybody would look like Adam and Eve if there weren't any other humans on the earth. But the scientific record shows that there were plenty of humans that were not like Adam and Eve that were on the earth at that time. And I really believe, just from observing how people act around me, that those people would have just been land animals. The Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals and Australopithecus, Africanus, all of these ancient prehistoric people that to scientists, when I look at them, they look like skeletons. They don't look any different. But scientists are like, these things are not anything like us. This is something else. And the reason that this, I think, is important is because from the beginning of the Bible to the end, Genesis to Revelation, Satan is referred to as a reptile or as a serpent. If you look at a skeleton, these cavemen, they always take the skeletons, they measure everything, and then they have artists who carefully apply skin and tissue to these skeletons. And then they'll put like caveman hair and caveman loincloth, that kind of stuff. But, it's not just the hair and the clothing that would be different. It might be completely different species. I mean, these things, like, to this day, we don't know. They could have been purple. I suspect that they kind of would have represented the way we look now. So some would have had really dark skin, some would have had light skin, and every shade in between. But one of those species might have been reptile. And you would think, okay, these scientists are carefully measuring everything. If they found a humanoid that was reptilian, they would look at it and go, wow, it's a reptile human. But how would they know? When you find a lizard skeleton, or a turtle skeleton. When you find a turtle skeleton, it's got a shell on its back, and you go, oh, that's a turtle. But what if the shell was missing and you found all the other bones? You wouldn't. It might be a rabbit. You don't know what that is. I mean, obviously it isn't, but I'm just trying to make an example that I really can't think of an example to make for this. But I don't mind if you tell me I'm an idiot, but I really do hope that if you're listening, you'll help me along by telling me what you think. Do you think that what I'm saying makes sense? Or if it's completely crazy, explain to me why. In fact, if you think it makes sense, explain to me why you think this makes sense. If you think it's crazy, explain to me why you think it's crazy. So, yeah, the pure bloods, the gods, all died out with Jacob. That's why the nation that came from Jacob's loins is so significant, because he was the last of the gods. And so because of that, his children ended up having a little bit better, well, they were represented in the Bible more than the other nations because of that. Because the whole Bible is a story of following this line of gods all the way to its end, which would have been Jacob. But then, since he was the last one, God decided that Jesus would be born from Jacob's family. And so that happened. But that line had to be somewhat protected. None of those people were gods. I don't know if like Abraham had children with a woman who was not a god, that the child, maybe it would be half god. I don't know. Many of those ancient mythologies talk about demigods. Those are the ones that are half god and half human, and they all had some kind of special abilities. But after that, they didn't. So that's us. We all have this, I don't know if it's DNA, it's something probably spiritual. Probably no one will ever find it in our DNA. But to this day, there are those among us who are not like the rest. These things that we live around, these NPCs, non-player characters, they really are like animals. If you try to talk to them about anything spiritual, their eyes glaze over, they maybe walk away, they just don't want to hear it, or they come up with some kind of religious nonsense. And, but I can see those traits. When I look at my subscribers, the ones I know, they seem like me. They want to know everything about God. They want to know what their point of existence is. Whereas these other things, all they do is they consume and they destroy. They cut down trees. They're actually proud of the wars that they fight. They're proud of, sending their children off to this nonsense. They're proud of building shopping malls and bridges and skyscrapers. The people that I run into that will treat me with some amount of dignity are always like me. They want to know. They want to learn about God. They want a personal relationship with God. They actually crave an answer from God. When they pray, they're praying that God will somehow respond to them. These other things, if you go to church, everybody in there is going to tell you about how the Lord told them this, and the Lord put it upon their heart to do that. I don't ever hear that from my people. Y'all always seem to be like just trying to learn as much as you can, trying to help me learn, trying to learn from me. These other things don't. They are animals. We're all the same, but somehow there's a spiritual element in us that simply does not exist in any of these other things. I hope this was understandable. I hate making these videos where I just talk off the cuff with no script. Especially, I don't like talking about stuff where I don't have all the answers. But in this case, I really don't think there are any answers. And I think the reason for that is God gave us everything we need to get through this life and have hope. And anything He didn't give us is just stuff we don't need. But maybe He did give it to us. If you read the story in its original Hebrew, seems a lot like Adam and Eve were sent here to be gods over us. Well, not so much Eve, because that's one of the things that Satan promised Eve, is if you eat this fruit, you'll be just like the gods. Well, what gods did she know? She knew the Creator, and she knew this reptile humanoid, And she knew Adam. So in some way, Eve was not like them. But by breaking God's law, she kind of felt like she was. All right, y'all. Love you. I hope that you enjoyed this unscripted video that I hate making. Love y'all, and as always, if you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.